Do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Fun and games. Hi, I'm the OBG. Yeah, tonight, everything, when you're trying to get everything dead right and it's just not working out. That's what happened here today. And I thought I'm just going to do the show anyway, regardless. And I got some topics that I want to talk about. But once again, I haven't really prepared. I've had a long time to do this. I've got a new partner in crime who's assisting me with writing. I'll talk a little bit more about my friend in a moment, Reece Wakely. We've been Facebook friends for a while, and we've been in contact. I've asked people to help with writing, providing graphics, and providing content for the show, basically, becoming producers of the show. And Reece Wakely stepped up, and he's the perfect man. So I want to start off talking about the really fine line that we have between reality and fantasy, and that's often portrayed to us in films and on television. And I like to say it's a really fine one, and we find it really hard to differentiate between the two. And the lines are blurred. They're so blurred that it allows those who make the shows and present us with their ideas to present us with untruths. And we're often presented a single story time and time again. And this is one of the main reasons for people taking these stories as truth. And our refusal to look beyond the mainstream keeps us locked into the hive mindset, often for reasons of keeping us locked into the same ecosystem. And our identities, our very identities, and those that we attribute to others are often formed from watching television. And our perception of much of the world, our world, entire world, is also created from television. For instance, if I asked you to describe San Francisco or New York, even though you've never been there, you're likely to describe Manhattan, Brooklyn, or Times Square, or some of the gradients of San Francisco streets. And they're images that have, been burned into our minds ever since we were children, from programs, for me, for example, from the streets of San Francisco, or any major movie. It's always got New York in it, and that's not totally part of the brainwashing that goes on. But once the film pulls you in, of course, in this product placement, and they work very, very hard with the text content of movies and so on. Like, you'll always see Arabs portrayed as terrorists. Think about it. Think of all of your films from the 70s, 80s, 90s, even to the present day, and you've always got Allah Akbar, someone running through New York trying to set off bombs, and they're Arab 90% of the time, if not Russian. Anyway, there's a part of me that is critical of people that believe in things like the Simpsons. Freudian slip there, but it fits. The Simpsons, South Park, because people say that, they're spot on. And I've only seen 3 Simpsons shows ever in my life, and I've never seen any South Park. And it's not a claim to fame as such, but it's just to say that if I, like many other people, watch those shows and say, they're spot on, or that they portray real life, the fact that you're English, this is to the English people I'm talking to, or from any other part of the world, the fact that you identify with South Park and you believe it to be truth means that you live in that ecosystem. It means that you understand exactly what they're talking about. And comedy is one of the hardest things to understand in any language or any culture when you're new to it. And the fact that we understand every cultural reference that they make in South Park or The Simpsons, it's just testament to the fact that we watch so much American television and we connect with those shows and believe they're spot on simply because they revolve around mainstream fallacies and the contrived state-sanctioned truths. They don't mention the real-life genocides or heroes that stood up against the very system that they portray that they're upholding. So, we seek solace in television, and I understand it as a pacifier, but it's like, Why do you need to watch violence and rape and racism and, you know, subjugation of people as a pacifier? It's a really weird notion to me, and I think it requires some thinking from the most of the people. And if that fails you, you can always create an imaginary friend and let that fulfill your emotional needs. So I was talking to my friend Reece today. Hold on, I'll get right back to you on that. OBG. Right, so I was talking to my mate Reece today, and he contributed to this, what I was talking about the message that television provides. And what he says that these age-old messages that are used as a method of control and present across the spectrum of popular media, reinforcing a set of values that are at best misguided and at worst pretty much toxic. And a clear example of this is when they show the working class and our ability to transcend class, which we see in many sitcoms or, you know, movies. And they expand the idea that it's simply a case of just pulling up your bootstraps, you know, and getting the job done. And a very successful and admittedly entertaining example is a show that he talks about on Comedy Central, which is called Two Broke Girls. And it's based entirely on that principle. And he says, admittedly, while it is heartwarming, the standard metrics of success and brokenness, which are likely alien to any real life working class people, are portrayed here. And those tales expand the reality, and that reality there is an agenda to control the conversation that you can succeed if only you didn't have that second hot chocolate at Costa, or if you you know, if you just quit smoking. But fortunately, the myth of hard work equals success is rapidly having its legitimacy challenged by, you know, our poorest and most hard-working communities. And of course, there are those that climb the social ladder, I understand that. But the very nature of the current mode of production and distribution implies an inherent need for such a ladder in the first place. And it can be challenged by a trip to the fringe, away from the mainstream of information, with autonomous communities practicing more horizontal existence, where the work is shared, and not because it's right to work, but because it's necessary. And what isn't necessary is a top-down structure of control, telling people, especially the working class, that what they need and that they're the only providers. And while the classic work ethic, such as a puritanical work ethic, exists, is simply that work is virtuous, and it is being dismantled by a generation of disaffected and bitter youth looking to the old institutions of authority that claim that if we jump through hoops, that everything could be ours. And they show us programs on television like Cribs and, you know, all these other programs which have exceptions to the rule, and they claim that they're doing us a favour by giving us employment and that we are not expendable, when in fact it's quite the opposite. And as Reece says, it's an insidious con. So what happens next is anybody's guess. However, if we change our view about us as a labour force, you know, the labour force who doesn't benefit from profit, we will fight to make a change to the current system.
You not heard of the OBG? Big people talk, man. You need to get involved. You might even catch a blessing.
So, class is one of the struggles that I've been present in. I'm part of the working class. Some people have had a go at me and said, oh, you're middle class. And it's like, no, actually, I'm working class. There's no doubt about that. My education, my upbringing, you know, my cultural environment and so on. But I kind of did okay financially at times. And it's like, I prefer the quiet, the nicer areas, you know, and my surroundings were kind of middle classes, I guess. But I was there, you know, I was a thorn in the side of the middle class, educating them and telling them to be nice to people and not to be so fake. I love you middle class people, don't get me wrong, but your twattishness has been observed. So I never actually felt content with my position. And I don't know if you know Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, where they breed alpha, betas, gammas, deltas, epsilons, and so on. And really what it does is an allegory for our class structure. So, as I said, I found my contentment, and my contentment is what keeps me going rather than being happy all the time, which I think is like an illness, basically, if you just want to keep being happy. But I decided to pursue that contentment from a very young age, because I wasn't content with my position. I kept wondering why I have to be told what to do, why I have been told that, right, you've been bred by your parents and now you go to school, you're indoctrinated, and then you're sent to work in the factories, and then you retire at 65 and then you die. And lucky for me, I listened to older people when I was growing up. And listening to those older people, I learned a lot. I learned that they were mostly unhappy with their existence and that they'd made it all this way just to retire and die 2 years later. This was mainly from the guys anyway. The women live longer, but I see a lot of widows, and to me that seemed really sad as well. And I'm not saying these were sad people. These people were living their lives and they had sad stories to tell, but I think they were pretty much strong. They were resilient people, sort of the earth types. And so back to me, I didn't feel content with my position, so I decided to make the change. And it was kind of a combination of stroke of luck and my brilliant observation. I always had a technical mind, always wanted to repair things, always wondered how things worked, people and objects. And so I started studying philosophy when I was, 12 years old. I started reading my first book. And I also used to take things apart and like mechanical at the time for us in the main watches, clocks, and repair them. And when computers came along, I decided this is it. Not just for me because I like them, but I was like, wow, this is the future. And to me, it was really clear. It was like looking into a crystal ball. I was like, wow, this is the future. This is where everyone will be. So I can make a living here. I didn't plan to get rich, I never do, but I knew this is where I would make a living. And I always used to say until the end of my life. Unfortunately, I was wrong. One, you get a bit old. It's hard to learn the new stuff, and companies tend to employ, younger people. And even if you do stay on, I've seen people like, you're not happy there. You're like 55 years old and you've got all these 25-year-old like fast people around you. And even though you can get on with them, they're young, they're growing up, and at that age, you're pretty much the most selfish people on the planet, 16 to 25, It's all about survival, hormones, raging, and you think you're the best. And this is when the governments actually ensnare you. That's when they sell you all the shit and tell you you're unique. Buy one of these, like everyone else, and you'll be an individual. So it's no one's fault, but I think if we think on it, and if you listen to older people and their wise messages, then you can accelerate your growth. And this is what happened to me. I think my success was down to listening to older people and taking it on board. You have to suffer a lot of bullshit. I've even started doing the bullshit at my age now, Always got a story to tell. Always got a story. And for some reason, those stories are never short stories. It's always a story about this and that happened. And young people are polite enough to listen. But, we're good at body language as we get older, all of us. And you could see when it's time to switch off, which I am quite good at switching off. But every now and then I forget, and I'm letting them have it. I've got some young person there listening to why I prefer blue shirts to yellow ones, and how I named my tortoise when I was 7 years old. But I'm going off track here. It's about working class. And so among the working class, as I said, there were my struggles. Now, one of the biggest struggles that, I don't even call it a struggle. What people try to put upon me was racism. People try to tell you, you're black, you're not worth anything. You're black, you're this. You're black, listen, I'm in a superior position. It's often white people, grew up in the UK. But what I want to talk about here in the defence of the UK is what an amazing country at times, that where people come together, where people unite, where people want to fight against anything that they see as wrong. So racism in the UK is a given. However, there's always a good show against fascism, and the anti-fascists in the UK always have a good turnout. And one of the most memorable events in the UK history that I know of is the Battle of Cable Street. So let's talk about it. Sitting back since yesterday, it's a game don't wanna play. So, on October the 4th in 1936 in London, of all places, a group of people who were lightly high on the success of the achievements of their counterparts in Italy, Germany, and Spain. Well, anyway, these tards, they were convinced of their invincibility, and in their ignorance, they claimed to be the voice of the abandoned and disenfranchised, and that they were a force working towards a renewed national purpose in the UK. However, it didn't quite work out as planned. So Oswald Mosley, he was the leader of that movement, and he planned to celebrate the 4th birthday of his fascist party by sending 3,000 uniformed black shirts in groups of 4 columns marching through London's East End streets, and they were to go into the areas where there were thriving Jewish communities. And those fascists headed towards 4 predestined sites in Shoreditch, Bethnal Green, Bow and Limehouse, where Oswald Mosley and other leading fascist leaders planned to communicate with local supporters with speeches of promising, Greater Britain, and all at the expense of the Jewish neighbours who they blamed at the time for all of society's ills. And the government made it clear that they weren't going to ban the march, and they were allowing these people to march through the heart of the Jewish quarter. And in response, and this is amazing, please, beg of you, go and do more research just to see the people who are involved in this and how the British came together, not just, the Irish, sorry, I mean the British when I say that, I thought I said the English there. So everyone came together, and it's estimated there were 100,000 to 200,000 people who were led by trade unionists, communists, anarchists and socialists who blocked Oswald Mosley's path. Anti-fascist transport workers jumped off trains to help defend protesters from police beatings. The Communist Party turned up, and they turned East End cafes into first aid clinics to treat the wounded. Women threw rotten food and marbles and the contents of chamber pots out of the windows from their houses to line the streets of Stepney. And in solidarity with the Jewish community, Irish dock workers helped tear up the streets, street paving to build barricades against the fascists. No mention of black people, but I'm just going to say imagine there were many there. And the battle for Cable Street also launched movements for tenants' rights, against economic injustice and in defence of immigrants, and it put a halt to these black shirts and their boldness and their claim to running riot through London. And I'm really proud of those people to this day. So as we face racism again in this age and the violence and the division of our society, we have to remember that the community solidarity that turned Mosley and his mob of fascists away is possible for us to do today, and we have to do that whenever we face any fascist challenge.
You not heard of the OBG? Big people talk, man. You need to get involved. You might even catch a blessing.
Okay, got a little something for you. It's like a test in a way, but let's see what happens. And let me know if I should do any more of these in the future as well. Fed up fluoridated pissy water? That didn't work. Hi, I'm OBG. Okay. There's a film review. Film review test thing. And the film that I saw recently, and I really enjoyed, it's called Brightburn. It's a superhero horror thriller suspense movie, and it works. It really does a job. It's about a young boy, baby that comes to Earth, much like in Superman, the Kents find him, but these people are quite stupid. Let's call them the cunts. Anyway, they find the baby, he grows up, and as a teenager, he's a cunt. It's not a bad movie at all, to be honest. It's called Brightburn. It's not your usual superhero movie. It's got some twists and turns in it, and some like squeamish parts. Squeamish for me anyway. I don't really like horror films and blood and gore that much. But if you want a good movie that'll maybe keep you locked in, I'd recommend Brightburn. I turned it on and I managed to sit through it from beginning to end.
Come to the sound of my voice! You're safe now.
Brightburn.
I wanted you good, man.
Get in.
I do.
Come on. This is the beauty of doing it live with like 10 minutes to spare. Never mind. Right, moving on.
Knock yourself out. Tap water. It's the taste on everyone's lips.
Right, so do something. That's what I want to say. Do something. We're always trying to be something. And the issue that I see is that we never truly know what we want to be. You know, we're dynamic, evolving human beings, and if we set ourselves a goal of being something, we set up a challenge that is often not fruitful. And I'm talking on a deeper level, not just wanting to be an accountant or to be, you know, a diver. I mean, being who we want to be. And we can't see the future, and trying to form ourselves to be something there seems to be pointless. I'm talking about our humanity, our humaneness, who we are. In my view, I think more than just trying to be, we should do more. Doing more gets results. Trying to be often leads to this selfishness where it's all about you and what you want to be. I'm not talking about achievements here. I'm talking about that be, what we all know. You know, what do you want to be? What are we meant to be? What are we moving towards? And we should keep doing things for ourselves and for others. And in doing so, we will arrive at whatever we will be. And as much as we can argue that we have the right to be, for instance, a DJ, and there's no harm in pursuing, you know, like that career, I think it would be missing the point by using, you know, that as an example and saying, listen, I was born here on this planet Earth and I'm meant to be a DJ. I'm going to be a DJ. It's like, yeah, do DJ, and you know what I mean? Earn a living from it, get some fame, but that's not what you're meant to be. There's more to us as human beings, more to our existence, more about being. And I think people who do that are a little bit misguided, if I can say that. You know, a DJ should be something you enjoy and earn a living from, as I said, and it shouldn't be who you are. You know, I'm here to step on your dreams, take notice. So by all means, do what you want to do, but don't necessarily be that. You know, do your best in everything, and whatever you will be, will be. So, right, a friend of mine on Facebook, my new assistant, he once said, the common layman doesn't have time to contemplate between the time he or she rents out to his or her profession and the time spent with the rest. Beaten into shape and herded into routine by school and cast as a social pariah for taking our time back for us, we pigeonhole ourselves as a defence mechanism. Actual survival instinct kicks in at that point, leaving most with one option: to work, feed, rest and work. And in the absence of alternative opportunities handed to the more fortunate, man must drone on or be left by the wayside to defend for oneself. Granted, in the West, we have a safety net with a welfare state which is flawed from the ground up. Another conversation entirely. And this area of society is burdened and left to fend for themselves by a flawed education system that drops them in the laps of a failed welfare state. And we end up with a show like Benefit Street, and all we see is apathy, all thanks to Jeremy Kyle and McDonald's. And the objective is to ignite a spark in that area, a spark that ignites a paradigm shift within the entire realm of how we view ourselves and how those around us as a species. Solidarity is the name of the game, and the fight is with those who will discredit the loud and manipulate the lost, those who propagate the us and them narrative. This is vital for us to step forwards together. And on that note, I want to say thanks for tuning in. It was a bit of a messy show tonight, but we're getting there. I'm the OBG. Love.
There's a man who contradicts. Wait, he's a type of guy to you. There's no first place.